I'd like to call the October meeting of Cherokee Village City Council to order. Please join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let us have a moment of silent prayer, please. Amen. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
First of all councilmen, your mics have been turned off, so please turn them on. Roland? Here. Crispy?
Here.
Cam?
Here.
Kathleen? Ishmael?
Here.
Thompson?
Here.
Smith?
Here.
Martin?
Here.
Forms established.
Thank you. Next item is approval of tonight's agenda.
Mayor, I would like to, under old business, remove ordinance 22-XX. The ordinance isn't finished yet on that one, from what I just heard. That's the one on the property, correct?
No, that's...
No, sorry, number 2.
That's item number 2.
Item number 2, correct. And under new business number 4, I'd like to postpone that till next meeting also, please. So on the first, old business would be number 2, and on the new business would be number 4.
Okay. Any objections? Hearing none, then those 2 items will be so noted for the next meeting.
I make a motion we approve as amended. I second.
Motion by Mr. Martin, second by Mr. Smith to approve tonight's agenda as amended. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Agenda so approved. Next item are public comments on agenda items. Anyone in the audience wish to make a comment? Yes, ma'am. Please come to the podium and state your name.
I'm Mary Ann Quick. I live at 15 P.E.G Drive on Lake Omaha, and I wanted to address the ordinance regarding permitting chickens in the village. Mr. Schleich had consulted with a chicken expert and said that the noise factor would be no louder than the average human voice, and I believe that. The problem is when you live on a lake, the average human voice carries 400 to 500 feet. If you would live on a lake and you want confidentiality or privacy, you must be within the corners of your home with the doors and windows closed. It's just a fact of lake life. And if there's noise, when it's really quiet, it echoes around the lake. So the fact that it's only the volume of a human voice is really of little consolation. I mean, I can tell you, my neighbor calls her mother at the same time every morning. I can tell you her latest prescription, how her friends are doing with chemotherapy and hip replacement and everything else. And she can tell you my menu for the weekend and what tidbit I learned about Arkansas watching PBS. So there is no privacy on the lake when you are outside. And so this ordinance really does not work for the lakes. The next thing I wanted to address was the ordinance itself. everyone is assuming that these are backyard chickens. The ordinance does not specify backyard, okay? And on item E, they talk about an enclosure, that they must be secured in a secure enclosure. Then they give dimensions for a minimum size of a coop, and it doesn't say that the chickens must be confined to the coop, whatever. That was unclear and should, it needs clarity. Then on item F of the ordinance, it says 25 feet from your neighbor's residence. You have to be that far away. Now, if you live on a lake, the backyard configurations are different. Most people, the majority of people, have their boat storage and lake access to one side of the property to allow a maximum swimming area and yard access in the other for the rest of the property. Now, based on this 25 feet away from my neighbor's residence, I could do that, stay 5 feet off my lot line, and put my coop right next to where my neighbor has to access the lake for their boats, with their guests, grandchildren, everything else. And you need to have some kind of a setback from the lot line that's at least 15 feet to keep the birds away from that. It's not, I like my neighbors, and I wouldn't put a coop next to their lake access, but I could, okay? And be perfectly legal in doing so. So I think that really requires some adjustment on that one. And it also, section 4 talks about the fine for if you exceed your birds, or you're not keeping your pen clean or whatever, and you're cited, there should be some provision in there for revocation of the permit, not just the fine. That, for example, if you have 3 offenses, it should be revoked for up to 3 years or something like that, where there's some permanent or semi-permanent penalty to the offender. And the other thing I wanted to address is, I know you have nothing to do with bills of assurance, but I just want to say this, that if you pass this ordinance, you will be pitting neighbor against neighbor. What will happen is a group of residents that oppose chickens in their neighborhood will get together, pool their financial resources, hire an attorney, so the financial burden doesn't fall on one person, and they will sue that neighbor that has the chickens for violating the bill of assurance. The courts have almost always ruled the contract is contract, so your chances of prevailing are excellent in court, so your chances of getting your money back from your neighbor are very good. However, when in today's society, when you have an organized group opposed to one person or one residence, it doesn't always end well. And I would ask you not to pit neighbor against neighbor. Please vote no on this ordinance.
Okay. The next item is the approval of minutes from the September meeting.
I motion we approve. Second.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Martin to approve the minutes from the September meeting. They'll be filed for audit. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next item is correspondence. Clerk, do we have any correspondence?
No correspondence.
Thank you. Next item is the financial report and bank reconciliations.
Mr. Mayor, motion we approve for audit.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Ishmael to approve the report to be filed for audit. I think we need a roll call vote, please.
Tatum.
Yes.
Ishmael.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Martin.
Abstain.
Rowland.
Yes.
Chrissy.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, motion's approved. Under the mayor's report, the only item that I have is that I heard from RDOT today referencing the low water bridge project, and they're still trying to reconcile property. There's of all things, there's a deed issue with this building. It doesn't apply to the building, but because our property line goes out to the road, that's where it comes into effect. But as best as it explained to me when the property was released to Daggett, and although we had purchased the property, I think before then, to be used as City Hall, or maybe when he was here. Anyway, there was a stipulation in the deed that this building could only be used as a grocery store. So they've contacted Cooper Communities, and since they were the original owners of the deed, and they said, oh, that was a mistake, we should have done something else. So they've got to sign off on that, and it's in the process of being done. And when that's completed, the little sliver of property that they purchased from us, we'll finally get a check and payment for. So hopefully maybe it'll be in the next week. That's what she indicated, but when I talked to her last, she told me she would call me the next day, and it's been almost 3 weeks since that phone call, so I'm not going to keep my fingers crossed that we'll have a check in hand. Next are the department reports. You have those in front of you: animal control, community service. We did have a situation in animal control where puppies were commingled, and it turned out that 2 of them had parvo and had to be transported to veterinarian, and naturally that required a major cleaning operation in the kennel and other places. So,
Mr. Mayor, what's the status on the truck that we've approved for them?
yeah, she's been using the new. It doesn't have the signage on it yet, but that'll be done. Any questions on animal control, community service? District Court, incidentally, District Court will be here in this room tomorrow. Planning and zoning report. I skipped the fire department report. Don't want to offend Chief Deans. But, here again, you can see most of the activity centers around EMS calls and our medical assist and assist of seniors. We still have a burn ban on, correct, Chief?
Correct.
So we've had 3 incidents of where people, for some reason, claimed they were unaware of the burn ban and had fires going. The department went out there and told them to put the fire out, and remind everybody that if you plan on burning and once the burn ban goes off, be sure and contact Base Hart Fire Station and notify them. Any questions of the fire chief?
Mr. Mayor, I do. Cal, you had an extraction class this week, or was it just a demonstration that you guys were going through?
It was in-service training with the dealer on the new tools that we purchased. To get the guys familiar with them. Love design, instruct the guys on some new techniques and stuff we can do with these new tools.
Does it seem like we're going to be able to do more with less with the new equipment?
Oh, absolutely.
Good deal.
And speaking of the old equipment, I believe that we have a neighboring departments interested in acquiring that.
Yes, I've been in talks with one of the rural departments in Cherokee County. They expressed interest in our old tools, so they're going to get with me. I can demonstrate them and show them, and not over to see if that's something they're interested in or not.
That's probably most people aware, that's a usual common practice among departments nationwide. When an urban department and gets newer equipment, they hand it down or sell it to a rural department so they can update their apparatus and tools needed to be a services of department.
But we still have to have an ordinance to take it out of our inventory or a resolution, correct?
That will be when it's
Okay.
completed.
Have you ordered a new truck?
I have submitted the PO to the manufacturer, so he can in turn submit the PO to the chassis manufacturer, so they can be first on the list.
They give you a time frame? We still talking years here?
Likely. The order date where that'll open up from the chassis manufacturer is in November, I believe. He can say what date specifically. But he did inform me last time when these dates opened, he said they were open for less than 24 hours before they filled all the orders that they were going to take.
Wow.
Yeah, we're hopeful that we can do that order in November, but it could be delayed. So. Has to do with the supply chain, particularly on metal. Okay, the P&Z report. Here again, we notice the increase in permit fees because that's mainly due to storm damage on some new construction. construction, we welcome. Next is the police department report. You have any questions of Chief Lane?
Chief, do you have anything planned for Halloween?
We do. Halloween night will be handing candy out right here in front of the department.
Is it like a trunk or treat thing, or just your department's gonna be handing it out?
Actually, the fire department's going to be here with us.
Okay.
I think there may be another couple of places that's also going to be doing it on Halloween night as opposed to the weekend.
Okay, thank you.
If you want to come in costume, Mr. Martin.
This is my costume.
But encourage the parents of children to bring them up here, so. And hope the weather is nice. Next is the street department report. Due to the dry weather and the wind, we've had probably more fallen trees than usual that's had to be cleared. The department was involved in the curbside pickup here this past week. And we got 179, was that right? That areas, or not areas, 179 properties where items were picked up. We were fortunate that our waste disposal company that all of us have as a contract with to pick up our waste, they gave us a discount on charges of hauling debris to the dump, and it was a considerable savings of anywhere from $50 to $80 per ton compared to what you'd normally pay if you went out there on your own. So, any other comments on department reports? I'd entertain a motion they be accepted and filed.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Martin, second by Mr. Christophe.
Tatum.
Mr. Tatum, I'm sorry. Okay. My hearing aid is not working on this end.
That's all right.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, other reports, A&P, Mrs. Rowland or Mr. Smith, do you have any comments on that?
We're moving along as usual, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Airport minutes, there is some work hopefully going to be going on out there. The taxiway project will be a definite improvement. They accommodate a little larger planes eventually, which I think will be a boon to some of the businesses, particularly Emerson Electric, having their people flying in here. P&Z Commission. Street Committee, there are no report, and the Welcome Center is no report. Next item is old business. Item 1 is ordinance 2022X, ordinance of the City of Cherokee Village, Arkansas, amending the Cherokee Village City Code regarding foul within the City of Cherokee Village and for other purposes.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to amend suspend the rules and put this for all 3 readings at once. And that's my motion to put it on the floor.
I have a second for that motion.
Well, hold on, Peter, don't you have to also put in there that this is amended from the original?
Well, the original was never brought up for discussion.
Do I have to put in it's amended?
You know,
I don't believe you ever read the first amendment.
No.
As I recall it.
this
So
is,
would be the first time it's ever read.
essentially, this is the first ordinance, so that's not necessary.
I'll second.
No second?
Second.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Martin, second by Mr. Tatum to suspend the rules of the reading.
No, suspend the rules for reading it 3 times at 3 separate meetings.
Okay, that will require 6 votes to pass it. Roll call vote, please.
I move to suspend the rules and waive the requirements of the ordinance being read 3 times, excuse me, on 3 different days for the consideration of the ordinance number, and it's listed as 2022-XX, dealing with regarding the foul within the city limits of Cherokee Village, and the ordinance be brought up for final passage by this council without necessary of reading the ordinance.
Correct.
Tatum.
Yes.
Ishmael.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Rowland.
Yes.
Christophe.
Yes.
7 votes.
Okay, motion passes. We still have to read the ordinance. Correct?
No, you just suspended the rule, you just suspended the
Suspended that
rule.
rule. Right.
Okay.
Everybody should have had a copy of it now.
Yeah,
Sorry, is there any discussion?
Well, I think officially, though, we still need to read it for public. We don't? Okay. Then, in that case, entertain a motion on the ordinance.
I move the motion, the ordinance gets accepted.
Is there a second? No second. Motion is moot.
Motion failed for lack of a second, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Well, item 2 is postponed until the next meeting. Move to new business. Superintendent of Highland School District, Mr. Lewis, is here to speak on the proposed school millage. Mr. Lewis, would you please come up to the podium? Right there.
Hello, my name is Jeremy Lewis. I'm the superintendent of the Highland School District. I want to introduce a couple of folks that are with me tonight. Ms. Kara McIntyre is our PR correspondent, I guess. Well, I don't guess she is for the Highland School District. Ms. Kelly Goodson is our federal programs and curriculum coordinator, and Mr. John Sinclair is our assistant superintendent. So thank you for letting us have this opportunity to speak to this body tonight. As many of you probably have heard, at this point we have a millage proposal. The Highland School District has a millage proposal on the ballot this November. We're asking for an 8.9 mil increase to go to new high school. So just from the beginning of all this, we've wanted to speak to as many people as possible. We wanted to get in front of as many people as possible to make sure that they had the right information concerning the village. Because when you start talking about taxes, lots of things can go sideways, right? So we've spoken with a lot of our stakeholders, we've spoken with a lot of voters, we've spoken to other civic groups, and so that's why we're very appreciative of the opportunity to come here tonight and to do the same thing. So how did we get here? This process started 3 or 4 years ago when the Highland School District applied for partnership funding, what's called partnership funding from the state of Arkansas. At that point, the state of Arkansas Facilities Division sent a group of inspectors up to our high school building. They went through the building and did what is called a facilities condition index. Basically, they go through and they examine the condition of your building. At that point, the determination was made that over 60,000 feet of that building qualified for demolition, therefore qualifying for what's called partnership funding to build a new school. Basically, they said it's more cost effective for you to build a new high school as opposed to try to remodel what you have. And so we were approved at that point, but we went for several years, 2 or 3, and we did not get funded. Go back to this past spring, we got the good news that the district had been funded over $6.3 million in what's called partnership funding to build a new high school. So at that point, our board, the Highland School Board, made the determination to put this village proposal on the ballot this November to ask our voters and our stakeholders for their part, for our part, of the total cost of the project. The total cost of the proposed new high school is around $30 million. $24 million of that falls on the school district and the stakeholders of the Highland School District. So that's where we got to where we are now. We can only ask for a millage increase. The school can one time per year. So we're coming to you in November to ask for those 8.9 million. I have a lot more that I'd like to talk about. I know the time is limited. Is it okay if someone asks a question?
Right, that's fine.
Does anybody have any questions?
What about an average estimate for, say, somebody whose house is worth $50,000? What would the difference be in taxation?
I didn't bring my sheets with me, but I'll try to speak to that. Thank you for that question. So, obviously, we all know or have a pretty good idea that you pay 20% of the assessed value of your home. So if I do that right now we are at 30 mills. The Highland School District is at 30 mills, which is the third lowest in the state, by the way. So on a $100,000 property, you're talking 20% of that, $600 a year. If the 8.9 mills goes up, you're looking at $176, $178 per year increase in your taxes on that property. Yes, sir.
What location will the new school be? Where will it be?
That's a good question. We've got some renderings. I won't get those out unless you want me to, but we have renderings placed around in local businesses. The banks have them. They're available at the high school and the central office. But the proposed new site is in front of the Hudson Center, between the Hudson Center and the elementary school. There's a long stretch of property that runs through there that would afford us all the room that we need, and we would be able to utilize the existing parking lot at the Hudson Center. So that's the area. Most of you guys know where that's at, where I'm talking about there. So the new high school, the proposed new high school, has 38 new classrooms. I didn't get to speak to this. And has 38 new classrooms, a fine arts facility, performing arts center for our choir, our theater, and our band, which would be available to our community to use as well, and a new cafeteria in the background building on there as well.
Question.
Yes, sir.
What have you done to see what drainage would be for the building and how it would affect Cherokee? Like with the Hudson Center, when that was put in, we started flooding in that area of Cherokee Village, really bad. and we've had to change some drainage around that area. And also traffic flow. How is this going to affect traffic flow? It's nice to want a new school, but I think the people that are paying for it should know how these things are done. And third, communities like Cherokee Village or Highland have no control over what the school district has or can plan or does in their building. Planning and zoning for both cities was not involved in the Hudson Center when it was being built. They were basically told to stay out of it. So are you going to partner with them and listen to their input when that's being done? Or is it going to be another thing where our planning and zoning and the residents in those areas are not going to have an input?
Right. So, I mean, what I would say about the parking, we have not done a traffic study at that point yet. For that yet, no sir. But as far as working with the city of Cherokee Village and Highland, I think, you know, since we started out on this campaign, we've showed a willingness to work with other local organizations, and we would be very willing to do that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Very much.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, I'd like to know the edifice that has just been installed in front of the school. What does it have to do with education?
The new, at the elementary school? Not. Honestly, it's the architect designed that. And as far as what does it have to do with the reading and writing for students? Not a whole lot. It's architecture, and it makes the building look nicer and more modern. Yes, sir.
Today's security concerns, I think what I'd like for a lot of people to know, and how I know it, I'll tell you. The perimeter security for our old buildings is very poor. There are way too many exterior entrances for unauthorized personnel to enter. How much of that came into your architect's plans for a better secure perimeter as far as the building?
So the current high school safety is a major concern at our current high school. That building has been added on to so many times throughout the years, kind of piecemeal together, that our students during exchanges, class exchanges, have to actually leave the main building to go into those other buildings, which leaving the doors open in those facilities, we've all heard the horror stories of the problems that can create. A new high school, probably the number one feature of that is safety. It'd be new, it's modern, it's all under one roof. The students do not have to exit the building to do any type of class exchanges. So that's a huge factor in building a new facility. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
So if the millage goes through and you build a new school, what is your intent to do with the old school building? What, are you going to repurpose it? Or are you going to demolition it? Or are you going to use that property for another issue?
That's a great question. Thank you for that. So when I spoke to earlier about the partnership funding, the square footage of the current building that the state deems that qualifies for demolition, we have to tear that much of that building down, or we don't get the partnership funding for that. So the only part, if the millage were to pass, the only part of the current high school that would stay would be what we call the CTE building. It's the brick building out in the back. It's been called the 8th grade building, several other things. The plan would be to repurpose that for a pre-K center. We've started a pre-K program in the district. This is our second year of that. Most of you who have been by the campus have seen the trailers that are over at the elementary. We have those pre-K students in those trailers now. We would be able to move those students over into a more permanent structure. So that building would stay. The band building where our band currently is, the plan would be to repurpose that for a facilities/maintenance shop for our guys who take care of our building. And then we have the field house, the football field house would stay. The rest of the campus qualifies for demolition. So the plan would be to tear it down And then we have said that our board is going to get stakeholder input to see what would be best to do with that property at that point. Thank you for that. Yes, sir.
I appreciate your candor and honesty. We get an improvement of infrastructure, but we don't get an improvement in education, i.e. ACT, SAT. There's no money guaranteed that the infrastructure is going to improve the education in our community.
Well, I mean, I can't cite every study that says that newer, better quality buildings improves education, so I won't go into that. But I will say about what we have done with what we have up there is pretty good. Now, I won't even say it's pretty good. I'll say it's really good. Our students perform at a level higher level than most of the surrounding districts here. The last few years, you guys know as well as I do, when we've dealt with COVID, it's been absolute, well, I won't say what it's been, but it's been hard on everybody. And our students have still performed and still shown growth throughout COVID. An improvement in infrastructure, does it guarantee an improvement in education? No, sir, I won't make that promise, but we do pretty good with what we have already, and something new and better for our band, for our choir, for our theater, and all the other new amenities that a new school would bring. Our kids deserve that. Our kids deserve it.
We'll allow one more question if anybody has one.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there any plans to expand any sports part other than football and basketball or baseball? Or softball?
You mean to expand the offerings that we have?
Yes, so maybe track or soccer or other things for kids besides the main.
Yes, ma'am. That's a good question, and we do have track. We have a track program right now, and I addressed this gentleman's question a while ago. I'll go back to it a little bit. Our track team a few years ago were a state runner-up, and we don't have a track, right? But we have a track team. So we just expanded, added the bowling program this year. We have a new bowling program that's coming on that we're going to start playing. Past that, we don't have any plans to start soccer, but we have several sports offerings aside from the ones that you mentioned there. But I'll be happy to listen to any suggestions that you have on, how we can expand those programs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Next item under new business is approval of our treasurer to conduct city business with designated financial institutions. This is a bank requirement in the past when we changed treasurers, or a letter from the mayor was the only requirement, and the banks have now changed that, and they want a statement in the minutes authorizing the treasurer by name to conduct that business. So
moved.
Motion by Mr. Martin, second by Mr. Tatum.
Question?
Who was it this time? You? Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
In regards to this, I know that previously we've separated out the treasurer and the city clerk's business, sort of as a double check or checking city out, just like signing checks by two different people. I don't have a problem with reauthorizing this, but I still would like the focus to be kept up, that they do keep their jobs that they're supposed to do separate.
I'm under the impression that the only reason this is being done is so that they have access to discuss things with the bank, not necessarily signing privileges.
Correct.
So, I mean, the council can determine who can and cannot sign checks. We can do that, but this is to give that person access to being able to discuss things with the bank, which they are not able to do at this particular moment in time, because their name isn't physically mentioned. You can't just have the department mentioned, you have to have their name mentioned.
We have a motion, second on the floor to authorize this. Roll call vote, please.
Hey, excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Is there a clarification from?
This is, the treasurer needs access to the internet so that she can pull out bank statements instead of waiting 2 to 3 weeks for them to show up in the mail. It doesn't have anything to do with her signing checks or even having authority to talk to the bank or anything, just giving her access to access her bank statements.
Any other questions?
What's the opinion of the auditor on this? Or is there one?
There is one. There isn't one as far as I know.
This is basically a requirement by the banks.
Right, that we need to comply with if we want to get the information in a timely fashion.
Okay. Thank you.
Roll call vote, please.
Ishmael,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Christopher,
Yes.
Rowland,
Yes.
Tatum,
Yes.
motion passed.
Thank you. I'm sure she will appreciate it too. Next item is number 3, the use of ARPA funds to provide a bonus for designated city employees. Mr. Taylor.
First of all, before I even start here, I want to thank every one of our city employees. It's an amazing job you're doing, the sacrifices. I want to make a motion that the city prepare the paperwork to use ARPA funds to give a $2,500 bonus to all full-time city employees and a bonus to all part-time employees with the amount to be determined at a later date. I also would like to include in the city treasurer, since it is an appointed position. Every recipient must have a minimum of 1 year employment as of today's date.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Christopher, I'll give you credit for the second. Motion by Mr. Tatum, second by Mr. Christopher, to provide this, prepare a resolution to provide this bonus, and we will have it available at our November meeting.
Can we, when it's prepared, can in that resolution be a list of the employees, what departments they are in, and how much they'll be getting each?
That, after I clear with the municipal league, I think that's possible.
Yeah, I don't, just department,
Yeah.
name of employee.
That'll be
and how much
that'll be an
that employee's getting.
attachment to the resolution.
Beautiful. Thank you very much.
Since we'll be expending funds, roll call vote, please.
Well, do we need that until it comes in front of us to
We will
vote?
do that, but we still need to prove this.
Well,
Do
we're
it.
just approving that it goes to the lawyer.
You're authorizing.
Are we authorizing it now, or are we?
Not authorizing expenditure, we're authorizing me to do it.
You're authorizing.
Gotcha, understood. I'm on the right page.
Okay. Roll call vote.
Thompson,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Rowland,
Yes.
Christopher,
Yes.
Tatum,
Yes.
Ishmael,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, item 4 is postponed until the November meeting. Comments on city-related business, have one individual.
As an alderman, I have a couple comments.
Okay, well, let's let the citizen comment
First, that's fine.
Yeah. Mrs. Quick. That was you. Okay, you signed up? Thought that was what that was for, okay. All right, Mr. Martin.
In that paperwork that we've gotten for Mr. Gillies, I hope I'm saying it right, there was a section in there that was done by the Arkansas Department of Agriculture, stating about the trees, and maybe somebody can look into this, but it was saying that undesirable trees would be such as, and these are the ones that I was worried about, oak and hickory. I thought those were actually rather desirable trees to have in the area, and they're talking about having them thinned out. And if this is related to his particular piece of property, we do have that hunting piece of property that's some big acreage in the middle of the village. Should this same thing be looked into for that acreage too?
So what he likely applied for was funding from the extension office. So they go out and do a study, and then they give you all the information they find, and then it is up to you to do that work or hire it out. So that was probably something that he applied for.
Okay, well, I just noticed what it said about the trees.
Yeah. And so then once he does, if he decides to do the work, then the extension office will reimburse him some of the costs.
Okay.
But again, this was probably something voluntary that he just did on his own.
Right, well, it put a red flag up that's saying that we might have a problem with those particular types of trees, not the hickory and the oak, but the pines. And since we have some density in this area, and we are Firewise still, correct, Chief?
What?
We are still in the Firewise program, correct?
Right. I think what you're speaking to though, because I read...
Two different things, yes.
I read that report. The problem with the oak and hickory trees in that instance is because that is predominantly a pine stand of timber. That report was done for that specific property to get the most out of it, because the pines are the mature trees in that instance.
Okay.
Might I speak to that too, since it's my property?
Oh, okay.
I have to discuss that very issue, so if I might.
Yeah.
Could I approach?
Please.
So, acknowledge myself. Jim Gilly, I'm a property owner of property, 21 acres located over by the airport. It's noted in between, I believe on the document for tonight as Hospital Drive and Allegheny. I believe that's accurate. So that 21 acres that I own there is what's considered an old growth pine plantation. So when the state comes in and looks at it as the Division of Forestry, they're evaluating it for its value as that. The hickory and hardwoods in the property, while I know it was mentioned in the report, me as the landowner, I find those particular trees of a greater value, honestly, than the pine. With that being said, what we're here to discuss and what I was looking at tonight was the approval of the commissioners for the zoning, moving from a zone 1 to a zone 2, which was approved this month by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So I'm in hopes to have favor from the commissioners tonight to do that so that I can move forward.
We didn't have the paperwork finished.
I understand
So
the
that's
ordinance
what-
itself,
yeah,
but are we able to move forward with the zoning, not so much the ordinance, but the zoning itself from zone 1 to zone 2? We don't have to detail out the ordinance other than the zoning.
What the lawyer has said,
Okay.
we're waiting on.
They can only do it through an ordinance. We don't have the ordinance now.
You can't move forward with just the zoning itself. Then.
Yeah, the only way they do that is through the ordinance.
Okay, all right.
So, next month.
Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you for your answer, Mike.
Did I fully answer your
Yes,
question?
sir. I just didn't know if we needed to do that anyplace else in the village that had large acreage, but
All right.
that answered my question. Thank you very much.
And thank you for your time.
And my second subject I'd like to make to the council, and I'd like us to have a working meeting on the subject of defining positions, the mayor's position, the clerk's position, elected officials' positions, and department heads, because in the past, there seems to be some misunderstanding of what responsibilities are, and I think we as a group can clarify that and put it down in paper. I say bylaws, but we could call it whatever we want, and then have it so that everybody can read and understand what their positions and their authority is. Because in the past, there have been some aldermen that have gone out and harangued people over at the street department, which they don't have the authority to do as far as I can read the law. And with other instances happening in the village, my misstep with the agenda that wasn't put down in paper, so therefore I didn't ask the right person the right question that I didn't know about. So if those kinds of things we think about, discuss, and come up with a day to have a working meeting on that, throw what we need into a booklet, and maybe get the input of the clerk and the treasurer and the department heads to say, this is what my job should be, this is what I need. That might be helpful. Because we're going to have a new regime coming in and we don't know what's going to happen. And if the council sets it up, which the council has the authority to do, then we'll kind of know going forward of what we can do and what we can't do. But that's it. Thank you very much.
Anybody else have a comment? If not, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Martin, second by Mr. Ismail. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.